Have you ever sat in a crowded room, watching everyone talk over each other, interrupting, performing, competing for attention, and felt something die inside you? Not sadness, not anger, just a quiet recognition that you don't belong in this circus. You try to speak, but your words get swallowed by the chaos. You have thoughts that could change the conversation, insights that could cut through the superficiality, but the moment you open your mouth, someone louder drowns you out. So you close it, you retreat, you watch, and slowly you start to believe the lie they've been feeding you your entire life, that you're too quiet, too reserved, too boring, that there's something wrong with your need for depth in a world that celebrates noise. But what if I told you that you're not quiet at all? What if the problem isn't your voice, but the deafening roar of meaningless chatter that surrounds you? What if your stillness isn't weakness, but the only sane response to a world that has forgotten how to listen? Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the Nazi concentration camps and emerged to reshape our understanding of human purpose, wrote something that cuts to the bone. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. But here's what Frankl didn't say, what he couldn't say in his time. Sometimes the most radical choice you can make is to refuse to participate in the noise at all. This isn't about being antisocial. This isn't about giving up on human connection. This is about recognizing that in a world addicted to surface-level stimulation, your depth is not a flaw. It's a superpower they're terrified you'll discover. Because when you understand that your calm is actually the sound of consciousness refusing to be drowned out, everything changes. The way you see yourself, the way you move through the world, the way you protect the sacred space where real thoughts are born. The modern world doesn't just make noise, it manufactures it, deliberately, systematically, because noise is the perfect anesthesia for consciousness. Think about it. When was the last time you heard stillness? Real stillness. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of space. Space to think, space to feel, space to exist without having to perform. You can't remember, can you? Because stillness has been declared war on. Your phone buzzes every 30 seconds. Your mind is constantly interrupted by notifications, opinions, breaking news that breaks nothing but your ability to concentrate. People talk faster, louder, more urgently about increasingly meaningless things. And in this cacophony, your natural inclination toward reflection gets labeled as a problem. But here's the cruel irony. The louder the world gets, the more it demands you join the screaming. If you don't post, you don't exist. If you don't speak up immediately, you're irrelevant. If you need time to process, you're slow. If you prefer one-on-one conversations to group debates, you're antisocial. The noise isn't just around you, it's inside you now, telling you that your natural way of being is wrong. Erich Fromm, the brilliant psychoanalyst who dissected the loneliness of modern life, saw this coming decades ago. He warned that industrial society was creating a new kind of human being, one who could no longer tolerate solitude, who needed constant stimulation to feel alive, who confused activity with meaning. Fromm called it the escape from freedom, the desperate flight from our own inner lives into the comforting chaos of external distraction. But what happens to those who can't escape? What happens to those whose souls refuse to be anesthetized by noise? They get labeled quiet, introverted, difficult, as if wanting depth in a shallow world is a character defect, as if needing calm to think clearly is a social disorder. The truth is, you're not quiet, you're discriminating, you're not antisocial, you're selectively social, and the world can't handle that level of consciousness. Because consciousness is the enemy of control, and a noisy world is a controlled world. Look around you, notice how the noise keeps people moving, consuming, reacting, but never thinking, never questioning, never stopping long enough to ask why they're running. The noise is a drug, and like all drugs, it promises to take away pain while actually creating a deeper wound. the wound of disconnection from your own inner voice, from your own capacity for depth, from your own ability to sit with discomfort until wisdom emerges. There's a violence in the way the world demands your voice now. Not when you're ready, not when you have something meaningful to say, but immediately, constantly, reactively. Every opinion, every tragedy, every trend requires your instant commentary. And if you don't provide it, you're complicit, reserved, part of the problem. But pause for a moment and consider this. What if your refusal to react immediately is actually the most intelligent response you can give? What if your need to process before speaking isn't social awkwardness, but psychological sophistication? The noisemakers of the world have convinced you that speed equals intelligence, that the first response is the truest response, that thinking before speaking is a luxury you can't afford. This is a lie designed to keep you reactive, impulsive, controllable. Because when you react without thinking, you become predictable. When you speak without processing, you become manipulable. When you join every conversation, you dilute every message. The constant demand for your voice isn't about inclusion. It's about exhaustion, about wearing you down until you have nothing left to say that matters. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher who understood human nature with surgical precision, wrote, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. The inverse is also true. The more conscious you become, the more mysterious everything appears. And mystery requires stillness. It requires contemplation. It requires the kind of deep attention that noise destroys. You've been conditioned to believe that being reserved equals agreement, that not speaking up means you don't care, that taking time to formulate your thoughts is a sign of weakness. But these are the weapons of a culture that profits from your reactivity. Your restraint isn't emptiness, it's preparation. Your calm isn't absence. It's presence so complete that words become unnecessary. The tyranny goes deeper than you realize. It's not just that you're expected to have an opinion about everything. You're expected to have the right opinion, the acceptable opinion, the opinion that fits neatly into the predetermined categories of acceptable thought. Your thoughtfulness terrifies them because they can't categorize it. They can't predict it. They can't use it to reinforce their worldview or validate their position. When you refuse to participate in the endless cycle of reaction and counter-reaction, you're not being passive, you're being revolutionary, you're refusing to be a node in their network of noise, you're maintaining your autonomy in a world that demands conformity disguised as self-expression, and that autonomy, that preservation of your inner authority, is the most dangerous thing you can possess. Everywhere you look, people are performing profundity. They share quotes they don't understand, discuss books they haven't read, express emotions they don't feel. The noise isn't just meaningless chatter anymore. It's sophisticated meaninglessness, curated emptiness, designer shallowness, wearing the mask of wisdom. And you watch this theater with growing horror. Not because you judge them, but because you recognize how exhausting it must be to constantly perform depth you don't possess. To always have an opinion about everything, to never admit ignorance, to never sit with uncertainty, to never say the three most powerful words in any language, "I don't know." This is where your supposed quietness becomes dangerous to the system, because you're not just refusing to make noise, you're refusing to make the right kind of noise. The kind that sounds intelligent but says nothing. The kind that appears engaged but touches no one. The kind that fills time but creates no meaning. Rollo May, the existential psychologist who understood anxiety as the gateway to authenticity, identified this perfectly. The opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity. And the most sophisticated form of conformity today is intellectual noise. Everyone using the same words, expressing the same acceptable emotions, sharing the same curated thoughts. It's a hive mind disguised as individual expression. Your refusal to participate in this performance isn't antisocial behavior. It's an act of rebellion. When you choose thoughtfulness over shallow commentary, you're refusing to participate in the degradation of language itself. When you wait to speak until you have something real to say, you're protecting the sacred space where authentic communication lives. When you prefer quality over quantity in your interactions, you're making a statement about what human connection should be. The fake depth epidemic has created a world where everyone sounds profound, but no one says anything meaningful. Where wisdom is confused with wordiness. Where intelligence is measured by the speed of your response rather than the depth of your understanding. In this environment, your natural inclination toward genuine depth makes you an outsider, a threat to the carefully constructed illusion that surface-level sophistication equals real insight. But here's what they don't want you to realize. Their fake depth is a confession of emptiness. Their constant need to sound smart reveals how stupid they feel. Their endless commentary betrays their complete lack of understanding. They make noise because they're terrified of what they might hear in the stillness. And you, in your quiet observation, are a mirror reflecting their emptiness back to them. If this resonates with something deep inside you, if you're finally seeing that your quietness might actually be wisdom in disguise, then subscribe. Because this channel isn't for the noisemakers, it's for the stillness keepers. It's for those who understand that in a world drowning in words, the most powerful thing you can do is learn when not to speak. It's for people like you who are tired of being told that their depth is a defect when it's actually their greatest gift. Here's what the noise-addicted world doesn't want you to discover. Restraint is not the absence of power. It's the concentration of it. While everyone else scatters their energy across 1,000 meaningless interactions, you're gathering yours. While they exhaust themselves trying to be heard, you're learning how to be felt. While they perform their thoughts, you're deepening them. Strategic restraint isn't about being passive, it's about being precise. It's about understanding that in a world of infinite words, scarcity creates value. When you stop filling every pause, every awkward moment, every gap with unnecessary noise, something extraordinary happens. People start listening, really listening, because they know that when you speak, it matters. This is what drives the noisemakers insane. They can't read you, they can't predict you, they can't categorize you. Your calm creates a vacuum that their words can't fill, and it terrifies them. Because in that stillness, they're forced to confront their own emptiness, the very thing they've been running from through constant chatter. Friedrich Nietzsche, who spent years in solitude crafting thoughts that would outlive empires, understood this profoundly. It is the stillest words that bring the storm. Your quiet presence is a storm waiting to happen. Your thoughtful pauses are thunder that hasn't spoken yet. Your refusal to react immediately is lightning gathering strength. But here's the crucial difference between strategic restraint and the restraint of defeat. Strategic restraint chooses. It observes. It accumulates. The restraint of defeat simply endures. It accepts. It disappears. You must learn to recognize which restraint you're practicing, because one leads to power and the other leads to irrelevance. The world will try to convince you that your restraint is fear, that your need for contemplation is procrastination, that your selective engagement is social anxiety. These are lies designed to drag you back into the noise, to make you doubt the very gift that sets you apart. Because when you master strategic restraint, you become dangerous. Not to others, but to the systems that depend on your reactivity to function. Strategic restraint is not withdrawal from life. It's engagement on your own terms. It's the refusal to be pulled into every drama, every debate, every manufactured crisis that demands your emotional energy. It's the recognition that your attention is finite and precious, and that most of what screams for it deserves none of it. When you practice strategic restraint, you begin to see patterns that the noisemakers miss. You notice the manipulation tactics hidden in urgent demands for your opinion. You recognize the emotional hooks designed to trigger your reactivity. You see through the performance to the insecurity beneath. And this clarity, this ability to observe without being drawn in, gives you a power that no amount of noise can match. There comes a moment in every thinking person's life when they realize that most conversations are not conversations at all. They're competing monologues. Performance art where everyone is the star and no one is the audience. Verbal masturbation disguised as dialogue. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. This is your moment of choice. You can pretend you don't see it. Force yourself back into the theater. Play your assigned role as the quiet one who validates everyone else's noise. Or you can do something radical. You can refuse, not angrily, not dramatically, simply, completely, without explanation. The revolution isn't in speaking louder. It's in speaking less. It's not in having more opinions. It's in having better ones. It's not in being heard by everyone. It's in being understood by the few who matter. This is what they can't teach you in communication courses or social skills workshops. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Martin Heidegger, despite his personal flaws, had profound insights into authentic existence. He wrote about the they-self, the false identity we create to fit into the crowd's expectations. The they-self always has something to say because saying something, anything, is how it proves its existence. But authentic being, Heidegger argued, sometimes expresses itself through what he called reticence, a quality of holding back, of not giving everything away, of preserving the mystery of one's own depth. Your so-called quietness might be the most authentic thing about you. It might be your refusal to become a they-self, to dissolve into the collective noise, to lose your individual voice in the chorus of conformity. When you choose not to speak, you're not failing at communication, you're succeeding at something far more important, self-preservation. But this revolution comes with a cost. People will misunderstand you. They'll project their own fears onto your thoughtfulness. They'll assume you're judging them when you're simply protecting yourself. They'll call you arrogant when you're being selective. They'll say you think you're better than them when you're just trying to be true to yourself, and you'll have to let them. Because explaining your restraint defeats its purpose. The revolution of refusing to engage is not about becoming a hermit or cutting yourself off from all human contact. It's about becoming conscious of where your energy goes and why. It's about recognizing that engagement is a choice, not an obligation. It's about understanding that your presence is a gift, not a given, and that gifts should be offered thoughtfully, not scattered carelessly. When you refuse to engage with meaningless noise, you create space for meaningful connection. When you stop participating in surface-level interactions, you make room for depth. When you quit trying to be everything to everyone, you can become something real to someone. This selectivity isn't cruelty, it's consciousness. It's the recognition that your time, your energy, your attention are finite resources that deserve to be invested wisely. The world will punish you for this selectivity. It will call you antisocial, elitist, cold. It will try to shame you back into the chaos of constant engagement. But remember, their judgment is just more noise. And you've already decided you're not listening to noise anymore. What the noisemakers will never understand is that you're never really quiet. Your mind is constantly alive, constantly processing, constantly making connections they'll never see, while they exhaust themselves trying to fill external gaps. You're cultivating an inner world so rich, so complex, so fascinating, that their conversations feel like interruptions to something sacred. This inner dialogue isn't loneliness, it's completion. It's the conversation you have with the deepest parts of yourself, where honesty isn't performed but lived, where thoughts don't need to be sanitized for public consumption, where you can explore ideas that would be misunderstood or rejected in the noise-filled world outside. The tragedy is that this inner richness, this capacity for self-communion, has been pathologized by a culture that can't distinguish between solitude and isolation, between reflection and depression, between selectivity and antisocial behavior. They've convinced millions of people that being alone with their thoughts is dangerous, that stillness is empty, that the only valid experience is shared experience. Carl Gustav Jung, who revolutionized our understanding of the psyche, spent years developing his concept of active imagination, the deliberate cultivation of inner dialogue as a path to psychological integration. Jung understood that the most important conversations we'll ever have are with ourselves, and that these conversations require calm, space, and time. The noise of the external world isn't just distraction from this inner work, it's its enemy. Your preference for inner dialogue over external chatter isn't a social deficit, it's psychological sophistication. While others need constant external validation to know what they think and feel, you've developed the capacity to validate yourself. While they depend on others to reflect their identity back to them, you've learned to see yourself clearly in the mirror of solitude. This is what makes you dangerous to the noise-dependent world. You don't need their approval to feel complete. You don't need their conversation to feel connected. You don't need their attention to feel valuable. And in a world built on dependency, independence is the ultimate threat. The sacred space of inner dialogue is where wisdom is born, where creativity emerges, where problems are solved not through brainstorming sessions, but through patient contemplation. It's where you process the experiences of your life, integrating them into understanding rather than just accumulating them as noise. It's where you develop the capacity for original thought, for genuine insight, for authentic expression. But maintaining this sacred space requires fierce protection. Every time you allow noise to invade it, you diminish its power. Every time you choose external validation over internal authority, you weaken the connection to your own wisdom. Every time you fill calm with meaningless chatter, you pollute the environment where your best thoughts are born. The inner dialogue is not just conversation with yourself, it's conversation with the deepest currents of existence, with the patterns that connect all things, with the questions that have no easy answers, but whose exploration makes life meaningful. It's where you encounter mystery, uncertainty, wonder, all the things that noise destroys, but stillness preserves. Once you understand that your energy is finite and your attention is precious, everything changes about how you engage with the world. You stop being available to everyone for everything and start being fully present for what truly matters. This isn't cruelty, it's consciousness. It's the art of selective engagement. Selective engagement means saying no to the noisemakers who want to drain your energy with their constant drama, their manufactured crises, their desperate need for attention. It means saying yes to the rare souls who appreciate depth, who value quality over quantity, who understand that stillness can be more intimate than words. But here's what most people get wrong about selective engagement. They think it's about being antisocial or superior. It's not. It's about being honest. Honest about your capacity. Honest about your preferences. Honest about what nourishes you and what depletes you. The noise-filled world demands that you lie about these things, that you pretend to enjoy shallow interactions, that you force yourself to be energized by what actually exhausts you. Albert Camus, the philosopher who understood the absurdity of existence, wrote about the necessity of choosing our battles carefully. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. But Camus knew that not every struggle is worth engaging in. Some battles drain your energy without advancing your cause. Some conflicts exist only to distract you from your real work. Selective engagement is about identifying which struggles deserve your energy and which ones are merely noise disguised as importance. It's about recognizing that every yes to meaningless engagement is a no to meaningful connection. Every moment spent in shallow conversation is a moment stolen from deep contemplation. Every energy unit wasted on noise is energy unavailable for signal. This selectivity will be misunderstood. People will accuse you of thinking you're too good for them. They'll say you're judgmental, elitist, cold. But these accusations reveal more about their insecurities than your character. They're angry not because you're wrong about them, but because you're right. You see through their performance to the emptiness beneath, and that terrifies them. The art of selective engagement requires developing what might be called social discernment, the ability to quickly assess whether an interaction will nourish or deplete you, whether a conversation will lead to genuine connection or meaningless noise, whether a person wants to engage with who you really are or just wants to use you to feel better about themselves. This discernment isn't something you can learn from books or courses. It develops through experience, through paying attention to how different interactions affect your energy, through noticing the patterns of behavior that signal noise versus signal. It requires trusting your intuition even when it conflicts with social expectations. The beautiful paradox of selective engagement is that the less available you become to everyone, the more valuable you become to those who matter. When people know that your attention isn't freely given, they treat it with respect. When they understand that your energy isn't infinitely available, they stop taking it for granted. When they realize that your presence is a choice rather than an obligation, they start behaving in ways that earn it. There's a profound difference between being non-responsive and being selectively responsive. The world wants to convince you that you must react to everything, comment on everything, have an opinion about everything. But wisdom lies in choosing when to respond and when to let the noise pass by, like wind through empty spaces. Selective response is not about being rude or dismissive. It's about understanding that your words have weight, and weight should not be scattered carelessly. When you respond to everything, you dilute the power of your voice. When you comment on every passing trend, you reduce yourself to the level of noise you claim to reject. When you react to every provocation, you become predictable, manageable, controllable. The most powerful people in history understood this principle. They spoke rarely, but were heard clearly. They chose their moments with precision. They understood that the value of words increases with their scarcity, that the impact of a voice grows with its selectivity, that the authority of a presence builds with its restraint. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who balanced the weight of empire with the depth of thought, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This power extends to your responses. You can choose which events deserve your mental energy, which provocations merit your attention, which conversations warrant your participation. But the world will test this power constantly. It will present you with urgent crises that demand immediate response. It will manufacture controversies that seem to require your immediate commentary. It will create social pressures that make your restraint seem like weakness or indifference. These are tests of your commitment to your own inner authority. When you practice selective response, you begin to notice how much of what seems urgent is actually trivial. How many crises are manufactured? How much outrage is performed rather than felt? How often the demand for immediate response is simply a way to keep you reactive, scattered, unable to think clearly about what truly matters. The wisdom of selective response extends beyond conversations and social media. It applies to your emotional responses as well. You don't have to feel everything that others want you to feel. You don't have to be triggered by every attempt to trigger you. You don't have to absorb the anxiety, anger, or drama that others project onto you. This selective responsiveness isn't emotional numbing or spiritual bypassing. It's the recognition that your emotional energy is finite and precious, and that giving it away freely to every person and situation that demands it leaves you depleted and unable to respond authentically when it truly matters. When you master selective response, you become like a mountain, unmoved by the weather that passes over it, unchanged by the storms that rage around it, present and solid while everything else shifts and changes. This doesn't make you cold or uncaring. It makes you reliable, stable, trustworthy. People learn that when you do respond, it means something. You came here thinking something was wrong with you. that your quietness was a flaw to be fixed, a weakness to be overcome, a barrier to be broken down. But now you know the truth. You're not quiet. You're surrounded by noise. You're not antisocial. You're selectively social. You're not missing out on conversations. You're avoiding contamination. The world needs people like you more than it will ever admit. In an age of infinite chatter, you preserve the space where real thoughts can grow. In a time of constant reaction, you maintain the stillness where wisdom can emerge. In a culture of surface-level engagement, you protect the depths where authentic connection lives. Your thoughtfulness isn't empty. It's full, fuller than their words, richer than their opinions, more honest than their performances. And when you finally do speak, when you choose to break your sacred calm, your words carry the weight of contemplation, the power of precision, the authority of authenticity. Viktor Frankl survived hell by maintaining his inner dialogue, his capacity for reflection, his refusal to let external noise drown out his inner voice. Jung revolutionized psychology by listening to the whispers of the unconscious that can only be heard in stillness. Nietzsche created philosophy that changed the world by choosing solitude over society, depth over breadth, quality over quantity. You're in good company, the thoughtful company, the thinking company, the company of those who understand that in a world drunk on its own noise, sobriety is revolutionary. But this revolution isn't about rejecting all communication or becoming a hermit. It's about reclaiming your right to engage on your own terms, to speak when you have something worth saying, to be still when stillness serves you better. The quiet revolution is happening in boardrooms where one thoughtful comment changes the entire direction of a meeting. It's happening in relationships where deep listening creates more intimacy than endless talking. It's happening in classrooms where a student's careful question reveals more understanding than a dozen quick answers. It's happening wherever someone chooses depth over noise, quality over quantity, meaning over volume. This revolution isn't led by the loudest voices, it's led by the most conscious ones. The ones who understand that power doesn't come from dominating conversations, but from elevating them. The ones who know that influence doesn't require volume, only clarity. The ones who recognize that the most profound truths are often whispered, not shouted. So stop apologizing for your thoughtfulness. Stop forcing yourself to speak when you have nothing to add. Stop believing that your depth is a deficit. Stop trying to fix what isn't broken. Your quietness isn't a bug in your social programming. It's a feature. It's what allows you to see clearly in a world blinded by its own noise. It's what gives you access to insights that the noisemakers miss. It's what makes you capable of the kind of deep connection that transforms lives. You're not quiet. You're just surrounded by noise, and the moment you stop trying to join it and start trusting your own inner voice, you become exactly what this noisy world needs most. A reminder that some things are too important for words, too sacred for chatter, too profound for noise. If this video awakened something in you that's been sleeping under layers of social conditioning, if you finally see your restraint as strength rather than weakness, then subscribe. Because this is just the beginning. The quiet revolution has started, and it needs people like you. People who understand that sometimes the most powerful sound in the world is the sound of one person refusing to make noise. Write in the comments, I choose depth over noise. Let's see how many of us there really are. Let's see how many people are ready to stop apologizing for their profundity and start celebrating it. The world is loud enough. It needs more people like you. People who understand that thoughtfulness isn't the absence of something. It's the presence of everything that matters. People who know that the most revolutionary act in a noisy world isn't to speak louder. It's to listen deeper, think longer, and choose more carefully when and how to break the sacred calm. Your quietness is not a weakness to overcome. It's a superpower to embrace. And once you fully own it, once you stop apologizing for it and start wielding it consciously, you become unstoppable. Not because you make more noise than everyone else, but because you make better noise, signal instead of static, wisdom instead of words, truth instead of chatter. Welcome to the quiet revolution. The world has been waiting for you to stop trying to be loud and start being profound.